Welcome, as always, to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for joining us. Well, Pennsylvania's roads are packed with cars and trucks, but first, Pennsylvania produces energy for America and the world. We'll get to those subjects after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
When we talk about energy, we have Terry Fitzpatrick, the president and CEO of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, joining us to chat about it. I'll tell you something, Terry, before we get into the subject that you're an expert on, let's talk about another mail-in ballot decision. The Pennsylvania State Supreme Court says it's legal. It's legal, it's legal, it's legal, and most of us who follow this think, well, it may be appealed, it may go other places, but at least for the fall election, it looks like if you want your mail-in ballot, apply for it and you'll get it. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's been decided now by the state Supreme Court, so they have the final word on the question of constitutionality of laws under the Pennsylvania Constitution, and that was the decision they made. They upheld the constitutionality of that law.
Right, and it could be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. They could try to move legislation. Obviously, in the latter case, if they tried to repeal it that way, Governor Wolf would certainly veto it.
Correct. I don't think there's a federal issue involved here, or at least it wasn't a big one. That wasn't the main focus. So I don't see much of a basis to go to the U.S. Supreme Court on it.
All right. I want you to talk about the significance of Pennsylvania when it comes to energy. But before we do that, this is important. We can now, as a retail customer, choose our own supplier, correct?
Correct.
Talk about that.
Of electricity or natural gas. Laws that were passed in the 1990s for both electricity and gas, as the term is, restructured the market. And the biggest thing that meant for consumers is you no longer have to buy energy supplies from your utility. You can buy from a competitive supplier if you choose. On the electric side in particular, it also meant utilities no longer own power plants. So they sell into the competitive wholesale market. So if they want to sell their product, they've got to offer it at a price that beats their competitors. As a result of all of that, electricity prices have come down in the state relative to the federal level. In the 1990s, our prices were 15% above the national average. In 2020, the most recent year for which we have the data, they were 8% below. So
8% below.
Competitive markets have benefited Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Now, we produce a wide variety of energy sources, I'll put it that way. What are they?
Yes, we're the number 2 natural gas producing state in the nation now. We basically supply 20% of the country's needs. And that's because of the Marcellus. We produced a little bit before that, but it's been the Marcellus shale. We're the number 3 producer of electricity, and we're the leading exporter of electricity in the country. We also have coal. We still have some coal plants. We're the number 2 producer of nuclear energy. So, Terry, we provide abundant supplies for our own use, and really we're huge for the region as well, because a lot of these other states don't produce the energy that we do, so we're supplying energy to them.
And we also send it overseas, I'll put it that way, to other nations around the world.
Correct. Yeah, liquefied natural gas is a huge issue right now because of the crisis that they're having in Europe as a result of the war in Ukraine and some other things. So we are supplying more and more liquefied natural gas to other countries as well.
Yeah. There's an important question that keeps getting asked about why did, we got this inflation with gas prices going up. I mean, this is something that all of us face every time we, now they're starting to drop. What's your sense about the fundamental cause of that?
Well, it isn't just one factor. I think I would mention at least 3. One is the war in Ukraine, which disrupted, international markets. We're also, still kind of suffering the effects of coming out of the pandemic. I mean, that was a major shock to our economy. Everything slowed way down when the pandemic first hit, and then things picked up again. But in the meantime, you had supply chain issues. It didn't go very smoothly in a lot of ways, and so the demand for energy picked way up. So that was another factor. We're still dealing with that dislocation. Another factor is I think energy producers in the 10 years maybe leading up to 2020 had kept investing a lot in more production, thinking the prices were going to go up, but prices didn't go up. So, a lot of investors lost money. They're a little reluctant to get back into the game, particularly because there's a lot of anti-fossil fuel sentiment now. So that's creating uncertainties in the market. So people aren't running in to produce more supply because, it's all about supply and demand, Terry.
Right.
That's what drives prices.
Now, do you expect that gasoline prices, for example, will continue to drop?
I think they probably will, but if you read, the experts on this, they say, we're dealing with more uncertainty than we usually have. I mean, what's going to happen with that war? How is that going to affect markets? But I think they do believe the projections are that those prices should moderate. They're not going to come way down, though. We're going to be dealing with higher prices, for a while.
All right, greenhouse gas emissions down. We'll get to that subject after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, I'm chatting with Terry Fitzpatrick. He's the president of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. We're chatting about the significance of energy production to the economy of the state, and in fact, as Terry points out, to many parts of the world as well. Well, we have policies in place for the energy that's produced. Give us a sense about that.
Terry, the big point I want to make is I really think Pennsylvania is an energy success story. I mean, our policies have allowed us to become the producer that we are of electricity and natural gas, among other things. For example, unlike some states around us, we did not ban hydraulic fracturing of natural gas. That's what's allowed us to produce this energy for ourselves and for all these other states. And I know that's a controversial subject with some folks. Yes. They sincerely have concerns about it, but I think you need balance in energy policies. And I think we've done a good job of that in Pennsylvania. And I think that has led to abundant supplies. It's helped to keep prices down. Now, I know prices are up now. But Pennsylvania is not an island either. We're affected by what's happening nationally and internationally. But really, we're in better shape than we would be because of the policies we put in place.
What I found also interesting is that this often breaks down progressive Democrats versus conservative Republicans, as you know. But we have progressive Democrats like Governor Wolf who are concerned about the leakage from the pipelines that carry natural gas from western Pennsylvania into the eastern part of our state and then overseas. But the fact of the matter is he is for natural gas production. Now, he wants it done safely. Are you finding that to be true as well, that, that even progressive Democrats, not all of them to be sure, I want to make that clear.
Yeah, not all. I think I think the tendency is to be more moderate in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And I couldn't help but noting that Attorney General Shapiro, the Democratic nominee for governor, recently came out with an economic plan, and he went out of his way to say he's for an all of the above energy person, and said he supports natural gas production. He wants more renewable energy too, but he's not against natural gas.
Yep, and he is certainly a progressive Democrat. Again, I use progressive and conservative just as descriptive. I'm not getting into which one is right, which one is correct. Right. We're not getting into the right or wrong about it. Well, let's talk about greenhouse gas emissions, up or down.
Over the last 15 years or so, they're down 16%. And that goes along with all this energy production that we've done. Now, the biggest reason for that is the fact that natural gas emits less carbon when it's burned compared to coal. We have shifted. We still have coal generation of electricity, but it has shifted more towards natural gas because of all the abundant supplies we have, and frankly, because of the concern over the carbon emissions of coal.
Yeah.
Natural gas, a natural gas power plant emits about half the carbon dioxide that a coal generating plant does.
Well, the final question I have is that obviously there's deep concern about climate change and the question about how quickly we do that. What's your sense about that?
Well, Terry, the big thing, I like to sum it up this way. I think we can have an evolution but not a revolution when it comes to our energy supplies and moving towards cleaner energy, because you don't change this quickly. There's so much money invested in what we have. It's so capital intensive. If you try to make a dramatic change, you could really create a crisis, and we'll end up like Europe, frankly, looking around for energy supplies because we stopped producing them for ourselves.
All right, thanks for coming in. All right, Pennsylvania roads are packed with cars and trucks. We'll get to that subject following these comments.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
All right, joining me to talk about roads and bridges and all things transportation is Bob Latham. He's the Executive Vice President of the the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. I'll get that title right, Bob. All right, I want to tell you something. You're out on the roads. I've never seen such bad driving. People cutting you off, turning with no turn signals. Accidents are up. I mean, almost every day here in South Central Pennsylvania on WGAL. I mean, it's just one accident after another. What is going on?
Well, I was happy to come on with you in 2019 and report that the accident statistics in that year or the year before were the lowest. We had the lowest fatality rate in 2018 in the history of the statistic, which was really pretty cool.
I remember that.
A lot of things were, a lot of safe driving, a lot of better roads, investment in road safety and that sort of thing. And the pandemic, I think people have gone crazy. What we saw in 2020 when nobody was driving because of the quarantine, speeds in excess of 100 miles an hour regularly, and I think we're still in a hangover from that right now. It's mainly due to excessive speeds. It's mainly due to distracted driving. And I think that there's a general angst among people that they're acting out on roads. I mean, that's just kind of a personal observation, but I can tell you that unfortunately, just the fatal accidents are up 10% in 2020. Yeah.
And how about this? You're driving, and somebody is passing you, and they got this in their hand, or they're looking down, right?
Exactly. You see it all the time. So again, all we can ask people to do is slow down, both hands on the wheel and eyes forward, and from an industry standpoint, representing the construction industry, there's a lot of people that are working out there. They're moms and dads. They want to go home as well, and it's a dangerous job. It's particularly dangerous when people are speeding and they're not paying attention.
All right, we're a big, complicated state. We got a variety of what I call climate activity going on: mountains, flat areas, level areas, and obviously, if you're going to improve the roads, make sure the construction is keeping up with the need for it. It's about money. I'll call it transportation money.
Right. So last year, Congress passed the Infrastructure Act, if you will, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. That led to about a $4 billion over 5-year increase in money for roads and bridges in Pennsylvania. That's a good thing. But in order to match that, so in other words, when the state gets money from the federal government, you have to match about 20% of that. So simple math means we had to come up with about $1 billion a year, or not $1 billion a year, $1 billion over that 5-year period of time in order to fully access those available federal monies. We haven't accomplished that, as far as I can see. The Governor Wolf proposed about $170 million in extra money by taking less from the highway fund and for the state police fund, but not enough really to fully access the match. And there are some other items in there that we can get into in a little bit as well.
Yeah, I want to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about why this is important. And I want to say this, Bob and I have talked about this over the years. We're not, he's not, and I shouldn't speak for you, I should let you speak for yourself, but look, we want the state police to be funded. The question is, how does it get funded? It should, and some have argued it gets funded out of the regular state budget, not out of the transportation money.
Right.
All right, why is well-funded transportation program important? We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, Bob Latham, a well-funded transportation program, it's critically important.
So we talked about augmenting the state police budget, and I think that it's important to draw the distinction that really what we need to do now is we need to find a dedicated source of funding for law enforcement, and that includes the state police and local law enforcement as well. That way you're not pitting Peter against Paul and having to take money out of the transportation fund. We've done some surveys recently that show that people are interested in seeing more trust in government and transparency. That could help that situation as well. There's a lot of public support for using highway user fees, gas tax money for actual road improvements. So we're gonna work with the General Assembly and probably the next administration to look for, let's find that dedicated source for the state police. Let's not pit them against highway funds, and that will free up money for road improvements as well. Some $500 million that's still on the table.
Well, obviously it's critically important, and something else is that when we talk about major bridge programs, we had an enormous number of bridges. Go ahead.
So PennDOT last year proposed to toll 9 major bridges and pay for the repair that way. That was highly controversial. There were 2 lawsuits that found that they violated the public-private partnership law. So the courts invalidated that. There was also some legislation that passed so that it would allow them to capture some of the design and permit work that had been done going forward. So the bottom line there is how you fund those 9 major bridges is still in kind of a state of flux. So we have the major bridge program that is unfunded. We don't have the match yet for the federal funds. We haven't resolved the state police funding issue just yet. So those are some things that are still swirling around in the transportation funding space, I guess, if you will. And we do have a little bit of an elevated program, so we are doing a lot of work out there. We're still pushing about 20% more out the door, but like everything else, prices have gone up considerably. So inflation is eating at that extra money that's coming in from the federal government.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about electric vehicles.
Sure.
I mean, they are here now, and it looks like more to come. And there's still some problems with them. But give us a sense about. Give us an update on electric vehicles.
Well, again, that federal bill provided some $170-some million to PennDOT to build out charging stations. So that's going to be helpful for folks that own electric vehicles in order to recharge when they're away from home. We're seeing a huge growth in electric vehicles over the past 3 years, nearly triple the number of registered vehicles, up from 9,000 to 31,000, and all the manufacturers, of course, have committed to going to EV. The question is, how do they fairly pay their fair share of road user money, because right now, if you have an electric vehicle, you're not paying any gas tax, of course.
Of course, yeah.
And you're paying the same registration fee. There's been legislation that was proposed for years to have a registration fee for electric vehicles commensurate with the amount of money that a fossil fuel vehicle pays for in gas tax. For whatever reason, we can't seem to get that over the finish line, but we are going to have to look at a way to have fairness in the system, so that if you have an electric-powered vehicle, you would pay road user fees, because you use the same road as I do with a car that runs on gasoline.
Now, when you hear the term equitable electric vehicle charging network, is that really what you're talking about?
Well, what I'm talking about is, yes, in other words, if I plug my electric vehicle in at home, or if I go to a public charging station, right now I'm not paying anything in road user fees. Paying a registration fee, the same as you or I do that don't have an electric vehicle, or someone who doesn't have an electric vehicle, you're paying the same registration fee, but you're not paying the $250 a year average amount that someone pays in gasoline taxes in the state of Pennsylvania.
And I keep reading that, you know, these charging stations are few and far between, but I presume that that's all in the process.
Well, the idea
of
there,
changing.
the money that was put in there was to help build out more of those charging stations, so they would be more readily available, which would make it more easy to take an electric vehicle on a longer distance journey.
So you presume over time that problem will get solved?
I do, and I think, you know, if you really want to look out into the future, at some point we're going to have to replace the gas tax with some sort of mileage-based fee. You know, as we build out more electric vehicles, as fuel efficiency continues to come down, and we phase out the fossil fuels, I guess, or fossil fuel vehicles, or have more EVs and things like that, we're going to probably have to shift to some sort of a mileage-based system, which is, you know, when you go on the turnpike and you have a transponder, that's a mileage-based fee.
Sure.
So we're not really too far away from that in terms of technology.
Well, before I let you go,
Sure.
How optimistic are you about transportation funding?
I'm very optimistic, because I think that there's a lot of public support for it. People understand we need good roads to get around. We have a distribution economy now, so we have more and more vehicles, particularly delivery vehicles, on the road. When you talk to our elected officials and the two candidates who are the top candidates for governor, they're very much interested in infrastructure. Attorney General Shapiro has indicated that as part of his economic development plan, funding transportation, funding infrastructure is part of that. And I think Senator Mastriano is interested in it as well. So our leaders are looking at it, and
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.